minutes of the previous meeting?
No problem.
Bob? Ray? All in favor? Presentation of bills and accounts?
All in order.
Bob and Ray? All in favor? Cooper Lake Dam project.
Okay, in your board packets, we distributed the technical memo on phase 1 of that project. Just as you on the board know, the history of that project is in 2009, DEC promulgated new regulations for all dams in New York State, phased in by the degree of hazard. We're in full compliance with those regulations, but one of the terms of those regulations, as a result of the engineering assessment that we completed, we needed to bring the dam up to current safety standards. Pretty much all dams in New York State are on the same pathway, simply because they were all constructed in the 20s and 30s when the engineering standards were a little different, and so now we're working on that. So phase 1 was the initial investigation into there's lots of ways to resolve some of those issues, and it was our investigation of the existing structure and what needed to be done. Now we have a proposal to look at phase 2 of that work. And so, yeah, you guys can. Jim, I sent that to you last night, maybe?
Okay.
But, you know, that's fine. I am not proposing, this is really a pretty technically detailed, first a technical memo, as well as this phase 2 proposal from our engineering consultant. It involves a lot of money just for the design work, and it bears a lot of discussion. Considering that Greg DeViro, our engineer, could not be here tonight because of the scheduling conflict, I would propose that we have a special meeting just to devote to his presentation, so the board would have an opportunity to further review this memo that I sent out on Friday. I haven't had time to thoroughly look at it, and as well as the proposal, which I just got last night from him. So I would propose that we entertain that. I had previously spoken to Joe DeSico, who, you know, as you all know, couldn't be here tonight, this afternoon, and he's proposing Monday at 10 o'clock in the morning, if that works for every other board members.
Yeah.
That's fine.
So what does this compare to what we got in our packet?
The packet is the technical memorandum of the findings from the phase 1 investigations, where we did all the well house investigation and we had the divers. And it also further outlines, and Jim, you can jump in here, it further outlines what they propose, what solutions they're proposing for bringing us into compliance. And it's a little different than what was in the engineering assessment.
It sure is.
No, I mean the proposal, yeah.
Yes, it sure is.
Yeah, it is. It's a little different take on what was done there.
So we'll incorporate them both into this.
Right. Greg will come down. He'll have some PowerPoint. I told him to keep that as brief as he could. Being a professor at RPI, he kind of maybe. Anyway, so that you would have an opportunity to discuss and answer questions.
Okay.
All right.
So that's, you know, I don't really, unless the board has something to discuss on that, I certainly don't.
We'll say it for him.
Right.
Everybody in agreement?
Yes.
Yeah.
That's fine. That's fine.
Okay, we don't need a motion, do we? All right. 2014 audit.
The proposal from Rhonda, Kimball and O'Brien to do the 2014 audit for $17,000, and we have incorporated that amount into the proposed budget, but I'd ask for a motion to authorize them to proceed with that work.
Same price as last year, or?
Al, how does that compare to last year?
500 less.
500 less than last
Come
year.
on.
Well, we made it easy for them.
Right.
All right,
One second.
need a motion to give Kimball O'Brien authorization to proceed with the audit. Dennis and Ray,
I'll second.
all in favor? CSX Crossing Main Replacement Project.
As you know, this was another three-phase project. We're running on three-phase projects. The first two phases was the reconstruction of the line, the boring under the railroad tracks at Flatbush and Gage Street. That work has been done, and mains are back in service. This one was the slip lining of the existing 12-inch under the railroad crossing by Spoxville and Savannah. We have a pre-construction meeting this Friday. As I indicated in my report to you, Arrow was a low bidder, and last month he made a contingent upon our review of their references. They checked out, both Dennis Larios and I spoke to the folks up at Rochester, and they were very pleased with the work they did. And in point of fact, they had used both this in situ lining method that Harold is proposing, as well as the Aquapipe, which is a competitive brand. They, variously use both, and they're virtually indistinguishable to them, and they're very pleased with them. So we have the pre-construction meeting is on Friday, and I expect that Harold is going to ask that we defer the project until March, because he found out that there was a 21-day lead time on the liner, which will put us right against, the closing of the blacktop plants. And they don't want to leave those holes open all winter. He's willing to hold his price, and it's really, of all of them, this is the one to defer a little bit if we have to, simply because the main's not broken, and we have there's no problem. We're doing this in anticipation of the problem.
So they want to let it go until spring?
My understanding is that's what he's going to propose when he meets with us on Friday. I certainly have no objection to that.
Have they accepted Harold?
Yes. Harold has been given his notice to proceed. We've scheduled a meeting. We still want to go forward with the pre-construction meeting to make sure everybody knows what everybody has to do, because we'll have to bypass the pump station when that occurs.
So that doesn't present any kind of a problem as far as the timing is concerned. Supposing he says that he wants to do it this year.
No, this was his. He called Dennis and asked him. He thought we would have an objection. This came from Ryan Harold. He doesn't want to be up against. It'll be almost Christmas time by the time he
I
got
was
it.
going to say, we can't wait another month.
No, this was a suggestion that came from the contractor, not from us.
Okay.
So I think there'll be, that was the first question I asked. What about his price?
And all the other prelim stuff is all set too, though. I mean, the pump station, you have to. Oh, we're gonna connect into that other.
We have to get a temporary bypass pump that we will rent, or they will rent on our behalf.
Over at
Wycoop.
Okay.
Yeah. Cross connect the two systems.
Originally, we were talking about trying to put a pump down below, right? Okay.
Ricky, we realized it was a much simpler process to do it at that other location.
Mine too, because the mains are side by side.
Well said.
Two systems.
There's two hydrants there we can cross connect pretty easily, and it's a road that's one way, that section Cobblestone Street. There's no homes on it, there's no services on it, and we'll be blocking the driveway to the church or to whatever they're using Mahar School for. So it's a pretty innocuous place to have it done.
Okay. Council. Moving on, 2015 proposed budget.
You got it? kind of the 11th hour, because we had a lot of engineering to pull together, and we just got all the proposals.
Bill?
I have one, so.
And this is an auxiliary sheet. to deal with it. Everyone get one?
Yeah.
Okay.
The highlighted areas are the ones that are, subject to the most change. Obviously, it's just a proposed budget, so all of it can be changed. But we either don't have, absolute rock hard numbers on them, or, there's, as you can see, this supplemental spreadsheet is to kind of define and engineer and where that's gonna get funded out of. So again, this is something that we hand out every year that, everybody can look at, get back to us with comments, and if necessary, we can set up a meeting to discuss in anticipation of the December approval.
So this part is just the engineering part of it?
Yeah, and it's strictly where I'm proposing that the money come from those projects. That's you?
Yeah. And
I looked at everything.
you turn it off.
Well,
That was mine.
what?
Yeah, I know.
It's a little different. Hmm?
You said you're in.
No.
A lot of this funding is going to be included in the bonding.
Right, so if
Phase two.
if you look at the revenue side, that's reflected there. That's reflected,
I didn't do that.
no, I know that. Transfer from capital, and which should be replenished by subsequent bonding, and the loan
Okay.
funding. So,
Well, this is to be addressed at the next meeting?
yes, and if you have questions for, Al obviously put this together, so I can deal with the engineering questions in terms of where those, where some of those numbers came from, but in fact, you'll have most of them before you leave today.
Yeah, if we have any problems, but it might not be a bad idea to include a conversation at that workshop meeting,
That's up to you.
for a half an hour or so. Does anything that,
Al just has to, when he makes the public notification, just has to include that aspect, and that's fine.
Otherwise, I'll do it.
Yeah.
I'm sure we'll have questions. I'll have questions in fact.
Hey, that's fine.
okay? Phase 1B.
Okay. We received DOH approval, as I think I might have mentioned before, for the Phase 1B project, which is, just as a refresher, is the air scour, media, and new underdrains in 7 of the 16 filters. The cost of that project is about $1.9 million. We've already gotten bonding from the council, approval from the council for that project, and we're poised to, the schedule, I believe, we'll be out to bid, receive bids tentatively by February 1st, with construction completed by July of next year. So it's not a cheap project, but it's certainly, temporarily, it's not gonna take a long time, on that project. That kind of segues into the Sandy mitigation loan that we were awarded, because 1B is a big part of that. So if you don't have any objection, we can go to birds and one stone, as it were. on your desk.
Yes, I saw it.
Okay. Need another one?
If you're gonna discuss it now, yeah.
Well, I think you have to. Several months ago, and I don't know when exactly it was, I know the pre-application for this program was due in April 1st. So on March 31st, we submitted an application, and this is following Superstorm Sandy. The federal government, through New York State DOH and New York State EFC, created the Storm Mitigation Loan Program to assist utilities to improve the resiliency in future storm events. So while we had minimal damage as a result of Sandy, as a utility in a sandy county, which was Westchester, Long Island, we were the farthest north, we were eligible to participate. So we submitted an application and were funded to the tune of $2.7 million. That's a loan. 75% of this funding is a zero interest loan, which is, favorable. And 25% of it is an outright grant, which is something that I was very, very pleased about, and somewhat shocked. But to be considered for disbursement of the proceeds of this program by the July 15th deadline, we have to submit a completed application by December 1st. So Al and Debbie and I are working on doing that, but we're going to need several resolutions from the board to make that happen. Whether we do that now or we do that on Monday, it's up to you, but I think I can sort of highlight what we need. So as a refresher, this project has 3 distinct phases. There's phase 1, which is the Foxhole generator. So our Foxhole pump station was constructed in 1950. It serves a relatively small high-pressure district, but it does include the Benedictine Hospital as one of our chief customers, and that pump station does not currently have a standby emergency generator. All of our other facilities do. That one, for a myriad of reasons, does not. So through this program, we were funded to install a natural gas generator with an automatic transfer switch. The design for this project we discussed with CDM will begin in October of 2015, after we get the proceeds of the loan or the grant. And construction will be done on this phase 1 by May 31st of 2015. The total cost of the generator and the transfer switch and the engineering that it goes along with it is just a hair under $69,000. So the first resolution that I would ask is that I would recommend that the board authorize CDM Smith to proceed with the design of this project in the amount of $18,971. And I have their proposal, I've attached it, and I've labeled them all the proposals. So this is the Foxhole pump station proposal.
How much was that design?
19,000.
Just 18,971.
Okay, you need a...
And the 69,000 is included in that, or in addition to that?
It's included in that.
Okay.
It's included in that. It's just for the application to proceed forward, you have to have design agreements in place.
Okay, so this is a motion to
Authorize
authorize
Yes.
or hire CDM to design the pump station
improvements,
improvements.
the generator, in a cost not to exceed 19.
19,000?
Yeah.
Well, we're just doing the design part now.
Just the design. Because once he has a design, he'll have a better, at 90% of the design, he'll have a better idea of what the real number, or it'll be a much more confident number as he has all the design.
And we need this design, the design needs to be submitted by December 1st?
No,
just the
just
application.
just the agreement with the engineer to design the project has to be in place. He doesn't anticipate starting this design work until October of next year. And I'm sorry, he'll have it done by May 31st of the following year. It was a
Okay,
typo.
yeah.
Yeah, that doesn't work, does it? I mean, it'd be great if they could go backwards, but I don't think that they can.
So construction will be by May of
Right,
2016.
Yeah,
The
Yeah.
design work by, when did you say?
October of,
October
2015.
15.
yeah.
Okay. I'll make a motion that we hire CDM to design the generator improvements.
Second,
Second.
Dennis and Bob, all those in favor?
Aye.
You got all that out?
I do.
Yeah, kids too.
Phase two, obviously, we've already gotten DOH approval on that, and most of all the design work, obviously the plans and specs are ready to go to bid. However, in addition to those things that I mentioned previously, the filters and the media and the air scour system, within this mitigation loan program, we also added on to that some flood mitigation measures, because the plant is in a floodplain. And so we're looking to include flood doors and manhole barriers. The flooding that we've had there has never compromised our ability to operate, simply because you're familiar with what the place looks like in the design. However, as an added mitigation measure, we would like to include those protections. And we also, in looking at having a meeting about the Phase 1B aspect, we also need to, unfortunately, upgrade our inline turbidimeters, because they're not an obsolete technology. HOC will no longer support them because they have a new and improved version out. And in the previous work that we had done on this is the third continuation of these improvements to the plant that have been ongoing since the late 90s. Would be to reinforce a couple of the columns there, and I think that's included. So CDM is asking for that additional work, an amendment to their existing contract in the amount of $19,706. Now, the total cost of construction, including what we have had just approved by DOH and these minor add-ons that we're talking about, it brings the total cost of the project to almost 1.9 million, of which is all covered through this loan grant.
I like that word grant.
Yeah, but I mean,
We don't hear that around here very often.
and it's only 25% of it, but,
How much was that original approval for?
Oh,
2.7,
million.
and so it's around 680, 700,000 is the grant. Al and I, in discussing it with, and Al, I don't know, you have probably not had a chance to confirm this with EFC, but the way that funding works is that, from my contact with Brock Rogers and DOH, he believed, and he said we should check with EFC, that the loan gets dispersed first and then the grant follows for subsequent payments. Because I had asked him what, is it, every payment we request, is it 2570? He goes, no, the loan goes out first and then the grant follows.
That is confirmed.
Okay, so Al was able to confirm that.
Now, do you need two motions, one for this Phase 2 and Phase 3, or do you want to?
Well, I need one for Phase 2.
Okay. I'll make that motion to CDM to proceed with the additional design elements on amendment number 3.
Cost not to
From the
exceed.
existing contract, the amount of $19,706.
Second? Second. Did you get all that out?
And the third component of this storm mitigation loan program is the SCADA system. We have, and the SCADA system is a supervisory control and data acquisition system. We're fortunate, we were green before it was cool. We're largely a gravity system. So we don't have a lot of pump stations, but those that we do are all manual operation. And so we don't have any way to monitor, we don't know what we can't tell, I couldn't tell you now what the levels of our tanks are unless I physically go to the pump station and look. And so this grant, this program will also allow us to install a system-wide SCADA system for both our distribution system. We have 2 disparate systems at each of our treatment plants. They'll be integrated, and we would be able to know what's happening at both the intake and the reservoir. So the whole system would be, we'd have real-time, 24-hour-a-day monitoring.
So you'll have sensors at each one of the facilities
Tied into, and so you could, on a laptop, you could look at it, from, Rick could look at it downstairs, but the beauty of it is the plant's 24 hours a day. And so somebody up there would, so when we get the call that there's an alarm going off now, the best they can do is call Rick and say, hey, there's an alarm at Grandview Pump Station. And during Hurricane Irene, I mean, he had to go out, physically go out, and you know, you can't always do that when it's 60-mile-an-hour winds. It's just not safe. So that's the third portion of that. That's about $250,000 project, and the design on that is $92,262.
3/4. Total cost is $780.
You're right, 3/4, I'm sorry. You're right.
So this system is including the tanks down here in distribution.
Correct.
It's going to include stuff at the Mink Hollow and at Cooper Lake or not?
Yes.
So basically the entire system is wide.
Yes.
And will we, that'll just report information though. How about to activate valves and stuff?
Yes, that would also be included in this.
Motorized out,
Yes.
remotely operated.
Yes. And over the years, we have upgraded the controls at even the distribution pump stations, so they're all have 4 to 20 milliamp signals coming out, so we shouldn't really have to go to the tank to do anything. This should all be done through the pump stations.
Is this landline or is it internet or both?
I have to tell you, I don't know, because they haven't designed it yet.
New York City's internet, isn't it? I think they can operate that.
Well, it's not that it's not going to be internet. It's going to be site specific. How you get that information from point A to the internet, so you can put it on a system.
Okay.
So I imagine in town, yeah, we look at getting out through our existing internet. You know, we have WebDriver capabilities. We also have Time Warner Cable. We have there's lots of ways to do that. At some of the remote facilities, I don't know what they're going to propose. I don't know if there'll be, a radio system or landline.
Well, we've had problems in the past, right, where they think going in that it's going to be covered and then find it later on it can't. So, I mean, I guess that's part of this design.
That's part of the design, so I can't answer your
Let's
question.
hope that when they do the design work, though, that they...
Well, they better.
Yeah.
They need to, yes. Right now, we get the rainfall information up from over the telephone. Basically, if you're in the pumps, if you're in the intake and the phone's there, it rings every 15 minutes because the computer's interrogating getting the information from the rainfall gauge. It's not the most efficient way to do it.
Mm-hmm.
It's certainly possible.
Need a separate motion for
I would like one if
phase 3.
you're willing to do that.
I'll make the motion.
Bob, and a second.
Again, this is just authorizing CDM
To
to
do
do
the
design
design
work
work.
so that we can apply for the application.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Is that $92,000 part of the 780?
Yes, yes. Yes, that includes the design and all that. Yep.
Okay, I need a second.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Okay, the last 2 applications we need are on the state environmental quality review process for these projects. And it's a 2-step process, there's two components to that process. One's not dependent on the other. The first is we have to apply to the State Historic Preservation Office for their review and approval of the project, and to sign off that there's no impact on the historic preservation aspect of anything. And that'll be done and submitted next week. It's a pretty straightforward, I don't anticipate any issues, but you know, the turnaround is pretty good, and the system they have is fairly efficient to do that. The seeker is, we worked with our consultant, and I would recommend that, you know, we've looked at these projects really carefully. In your packet is the engineering report. We have looked at these, the consultant has, and I have as well, and Bill has looked at them. And this is a type 2 action, both every individual component, and both individually and collectively fall under the type 2 action as per, you know, part 617.5 of the New York State seeker regulations. So I would firstly ask that the board declare itself as lead agent for this, for the purpose of the seeker review, and then declare, as is written in your handout, that resolve that the Board of Water Commissioners of the City of Kingston, acting in the role of lead agency, and upon review of this project as outlined in the engineer's report from CDM Smith that was previously submitted to New York State DOH and New York State EFC, declare that the project components, considered individually and collectively, meet the definition of a type 2 action per 617.5, and as such are not subject to review under part 617.
Now, this has to be done to meet the December
Yes,
1st
that's
deadline?
correct. Yes. I mean, the filter plant project, which is the bulk of this, is
Right.
inside an existing facility, and we're not changing neither the footprint, the structure, or anything in the building. We're just basically upgrading equipment.
For the most part, neither of the other two projects, and putting a generator in it.
Now, and the footprint falls well under this, and same thing with the SCADA system.
Okay. I'll move. Can we include both of them under one motion?
Two
or
motions?
separate?
You should have a separate.
Right. That was her recommendation as well. The first,
I'll make a motion that declare ourselves as lead agent for the purpose of seeker.
And a second, all in favor? Added on it too? Move it on?
and the second one, the second resolution, is probably the most important, to declare it a type 2.
And I'll make that motion.
Second that.
All in favor?
Thank you.
You're welcome.
It's not exactly free money, but as close as we've ever gotten.
All right, moving right along. Jennifer Schwartz, Berky, to address the board.
Should we sit, or stand?
You can sit right here. Move it.
Hello, thank you for your time today. I'm Jennifer Schwartz Berky. I live at 35 Home Street in Kingston, New York, and I'm here as the Planning and Policy Advisor for KingstonCitizens.org, which is a nonpartisan citizen-run organization focused on relevant and current issues in Kingston. And our aim is to foster transparent communication via citizen participation. So I just wanted to start by telling you that I'm going to ask you a series of questions about infrastructure costs and project costs. But before that, we wondered if we could get copies either today in hard copy or digitally of the CDM Smith engineering assessment that was just discussed, as well as the technical memorandum that you mentioned, and the capital budget that you shared today. Would that be possible?
Today or now, or later on in the week?
I think that's a question you really should refer to Bill. I mean, yes, it's a public document. I'll go down, but whether you should foil it or not, that's really his.
Okay.
There's reasons for doing it that way.
Okay.
But yes, they're obviously the public documents.
Okay, so as to our first questions, and I have 5 fairly extensive questions. The first one is regarding infrastructure from Cooper Lake to Tech City, which recently has delivered less water than during the IBM period, when IBM was in operation. So our question is, what infrastructure work would be necessary, both immediately and incrementally, for the delivery of 1 million gallons per day to the proposed Niagara bottling facility, and who would be responsible for those updates and upkeep?
There isn't any,
I'm not sure you want to answer this.
we're not into
You can listen, you can make a request.
Okay.
You're under no obligation to provide an answer right now until you have time to research it.
Okay.
That's up to the board.
So, just to follow up on that, does that mean that this assessment has or has not been done?
We're still in negotiations.
We're still in discussions. We're not. Negotiations suggest that you already have a decision. You haven't gotten to that point yet.
What I'm referring to actually is whether or not we know whether the infrastructure, whether or not we know the amount of infrastructure work that would be necessary immediately and incrementally over time. So
we're waiting on a report from our engineering consultant, and that has not been finalized. It's in a final tech review.
is this the same report that was due today, or is this an additional?
No, we didn't receive it today.
I see, okay. By the way, you mentioned a separate meeting to review that report because the
Not that
engineer-
report.
Okay, that's a different report.
It's a different report.
Okay. So may we request a copy of that report when it arrives?
She has to foil it though. Yeah.
Can we be notified? Will the public be notified?
They already have the report. The report's here.
Okay.
That report is here. The tech report from Cooper Lake that we
Okay.
referred to.
No, I'm now referring to the additional infrastructure and the infrastructure that we're...
When it's presented to the board, yes, and it would have to be done in a public meeting.
When do you expect that?
I expected it today.
Okay, okay. So the second question is regarding new infrastructure. New infrastructure would be necessary for an additional main, bringing 750,000 gallons per day to Tech City for a future expansion of the bottling company. Where would the new pipeline begin and end? We've seen this reported, we just want to make sure we hear it from you. And who would be responsible for the costs and upkeep of that pipeline? So, are you saying we won't be answering any of the questions that I'm asking, or?
It's up to the board.
Well, then we're entering these questions for the record. Is it possible to ask when we might expect responses to these questions?
No, I don't know. When what? What's the
When
question?
we might get responses to these questions?
I think just present them. I would say put them in a letter and have them respond.
Okay, so that's what we'll do following this meeting. We will put these in a letter to you.
Most of these are gonna be contained in this final report from the consultant.
Absolutely.
Okay. Have there been any recent, and this is part of the second question, have there been any recent conversations between the city and your department to explore alternative means to fund the 16 million or more
No.
needed? Okay. And why not?
You asked if there had been discussions. No, there
Okay.
haven't been. Why, I don't know.
So, you have a capital improvement program that has determined, as we saw in the last presentation on October 14th, that it
Yeah.
would be either 16 million or 17.9. So, one of the questions we have about this is to understand that the City of Kingston does have a role to play in overseeing the construction in terms of the Common Council's role in the charter of the Water Board. Is that not correct?
In terms of bonding.
So, yes, well, in terms of bonding as well as assenting to the construction itself.
The statement.
Yeah, well, it's also a question.
What's the question?
The question is, as the charter explains, the Common Council has a role to play in assenting to the use of funds.
It's a statement. What's your question?
My question is, if you haven't had a conversation with them about it, do you expect to have a conversation with them about their role?
Why, I don't, I guess you have to ask the board that, but
I'm asking the board. So,
Having a discussion with the Common Council.
yes. So the Common Council may have a role to play, is that correct?
I don't believe it does, other than passing the bonding resolutions. That's the interpretation.
is your question, does the Common Council have any authority in making the decision process here? The answer is no.
So, as the charter reads that they have a role to play in the bond, that is not considered a role to play?
That's
It is
correct.
a role, that is the role.
They have the role of bonding, but as far as decision-making process, the answer is no. Is that your question?
Do you want to?
Yeah, clarify. Well, just to interject, the role of the council actually in the charter says that and we could read it verbatim if that would be helpful, but that their role is in, it states that they have a role in construction and maintenance of overseeing the water board in the case of any infrastructure improvements.
And that's your interpretation.
No, that's actually what it says.
Okay. So,
It's in the powers section. So I think the question we have is that perhaps then, we're not totally sure since the action in the EAF doesn't clarify the water delivery, but if there were to be infrastructure improvements to deliver the water to Tech City, that would be improvements, and therefore the question is, could there then potentially be a role for the Common Council?
I don't foresee that legally.
All right, so question number 3 is, has the water board created an estimated budget? I know that something was presented today to show the projected earnings from a water sale. Niagara?
That's impossible to do until we decide we're going to sell the water.
So if you establish that you will serve either 1 million or up to 1.75 million gallons per day, can you calculate what those
So
costs would be?
then I think we would have to, costs, or
No, what they would be charged for the water.
that would be subject to negotiation, but the first step would be for the board to determine if they had the surplus available to sell, to start with.
So how would it be subject to negotiation? We heard on October 14th that they would be charged at least 10% over,
At least.
okay, per 1,000 units. Is that correct?
1,000 gallons is the unit that we're talking about.
Okay.
So the rate would have yet to be established. Kind of be putting the cart before the horse to have a rate before you decide if you're going to actually sell the water.
Okay, and over the course of how many years would the infrastructure costs be paid for, in terms of the residents' water bills? So you had stated that the water bills for resident users would in fact go down.
Well, I said they would be stabilized.
They would be stabilized.
Didn't say they would go down, that's not my purview to say, that's up to these gentlemen.
Okay, but you did state that
It
it
would
could go up
stabilize.
as high, or someone had stated that it would go up as much as 30%. If we
could.
did not make this deal. Do you have numbers to establish why that's so?
Yes, because the $16 million, if we had to bond and pay the bonds for $16 or $17 million out of operations, that would translate to approximately 32% rate increase of our current rates. And that's all that says.
Okay. So do we have, is that in writing, that analysis?
No, it's just,
It's
I mean,
speculation.
it's a $5 million bond costs, the payments on a $5 million bond are approximately $400,000 a year.
Okay.
Approximately, depends on the rate of the financing, the mechanism of the financing.
So that would assume that there would be no other water customers that might come along that might-
Absolutely. That was
Okay.
just based on the existing infrastructure, the existing rate base that we have, just doing the math, that's all that
It
is.
was a no growth scenario.
Yes,
essentially.
yes,
Okay,
Considering they've actually lost population in the city.
and water
Oh.
sales, yes.
actually, in the last census, we gained population.
But we lost water revenues, water sales are declining.
I see, okay.
It's a national trend, we're not unusual, low flow toilets are doing their job.
We noticed that, this is on to the question 4, we noticed that all members of the water board have served far beyond the 5-year term stated in the charter, the president having served since 1981. Can you help us understand where in the charter there is language that allows for reappointments and no term limits?
No, I can't.
Are you aware of the public officers law limitations on terms of service in New York State?
Yes.
Can you explain that to us?
No.
Okay.
If you'd like to retain me, I'd be happy to.
Okay. Have there been efforts to identify additional members of the community who might be qualified to serve on the board?
That's a question best directed to the mayor, because the mayor appoints the members of the board
Okay.
without any input from the staff. I've never, in 27 years, been asked by any mayor if I approve of a reappointment or of a new position. It's
Okay.
not my
I
role.
understand. And one final question. We're doing historical research on the costs of infrastructure over time and what residents have paid for the infrastructure. Is that something we could request from your office?
All the information we have is public. I don't have the time to create documents. If you can foil, that's not posed as a challenge,
Okay.
but if you can, refine that request, it may be very easy to do.
I see. Okay. Can we discuss with you at a separate time how the information would be available so we could refine that request?
The information is published in the annual financial statements of the city of Kingston on file with John Toohey's office.
We also have our own audit. So we have our audits.
Okay, so we'll look at both of those. Thank you very much.
Our audit is included in the city's comprehensive audit.
Okay. Is there any more questions you want to ask at this time? Okay. Thank you very much for your time
Just so
today.
you understand also, if you go to the Municipal Bond Clearance Center called EMMA, online, all financial statements for the city of Kingston are on file starting from 2009 forward, along with all securities and exchange filings and any bond issues that they've issued.
Okay, that's great. Well, we just want to make it clear that our role in this is to try and bring as much information to the public so we can help evaluate the proposal and share it with the public. So thank you for your time.
You're going to submit the questions?
We're going to submit the questions to you. We're also going to follow the FOIL procedure that's required. We'd like to get copies of these reports as quickly as possible, as time is of the essence, and we'd like the opportunity to evaluate them independently.
I also make a request of you that the 1985 report that you have on your website, that you redact the drawings of the dam, because that's a very huge security issue. Anyone with malintent, that's the blueprint for blowing them up.
Oh, wow. It's not a public document.
I would suggest that had it been foiled from us, we would have readily given you the 1985 report, but we would have redacted the 2 or 3 sensitive plates, because they don't change the report.
Okay.
Just so everyone knows, there was direct communication from the Department of Homeland Security shortly after 9/11, addressed to municipal officers about publication of documents that contain blueprints relating to sensitive infrastructure projects.
Well, we're obviously very interested in protecting Kingston's valuable public resources, so we would never do anything to jeopardize that.
But you
First of all,
because it's downloadable.
Well,
And I don't know how many people
but
have downloaded it.
as it was a public document, we weren't aware of that, so we will be sure to fix that.
Okay,
Thank
thank you. Thank you very much.